This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
Welcome back to Tech Now here on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. We're your hosts Nabila Usman and Stephen Imediegu. And getting into it, an American-based Twitter user sparked an intercontinental debate on the use of language, particularly the English language, after he shared that wherever he sees the word delve, it is more likely to be artificial intelligence than a human being. His argument was that regular people don't use words like delve in everyday language. The problem with his argument is Nigerians. In Nigeria, there's nothing special about using words like delve. It's everyday language, much like foster, expatiate, and much more. While the Twitter conversation tickled some and enraged others, it highlights a real concern on the existing bias in artificial intelligence and the large language models that train them. Our guest on this is Oladotun Akongbe. Mr. Akongbe is the Chief Marketing Officer at FlynnCap and a blockchain expert who's contributed to projects such as Dfinity, Solana, Band Protocol, Ocean Protocol, and more. He joins us now. Hello and welcome, Mr. Akongbe.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on. I wonder if you want to use the word delve this morning so that we know whether you're AI or not and you can quickly identify yourself.
No, I'm human.
Well, thank God for you and your human generations. But, you know, jokes aside, right, let's talk about language and artificial intelligence. This Twitter user, Paul Graham by name, what he pointed out wasn't wrong, even though a lot of Nigerians and people from other African countries were enraged by it. They weren't pleased by it. But speak to us on the existing large language models that artificial intelligence is currently trained upon. Give us a brief summary and outlook of it.
Okay. Looking at the current situation on ground as regards the artificial intelligence bias in the global south generally, we cannot contemplate on this issue without having some sort of historical backdrop. So we could take our minds back to the issues of colonialism, imperialism, economic exploitation happening, or that has happened in the past, and we still have a little bit of such reflection in the global south. So the global south, which consists of Africa, Asia, Latin America, and part of the Caribbean, we've been subjected to structural inequalities by the so-called global power and their dynamics. So I think the artificial intelligence model is being championed currently by the global north. So based on all of these sentiments, we have a lot of structures being put in place by the global north, which is now creating a lot of gaps, socioeconomic gaps, a cultural gap, language gap between the realities of the AI models that we have in place and the reality of the global south. So this system reflects and reinforces existing powers and structure by perpetuating inequalities in the language system and in a whole lot of other ramifications. So I think it's actually very evident, and it's something that should be worked upon, and we should also take it into our hands by ourselves. I mean, the global south, because we can't write our history, we can't even write our technology, even this data on what we have been provided from the north. So we need to do this by ourselves to imagine things, to re-engage things, and to rewrite things generally. So that's my contribution for now.
Mr. Akongbe, is it possible for the global south, and I mean us here in Nigeria and Africa, to, or is it possible for the world to exist as far as AI is concerned and leave the global south behind?
Yeah, we've seen in the past, even outside AI and all of recent happenings, we've had a lot of. That is why we actually call developing countries. We are still developing. We are not there yet, but we are going there. Maybe we are going there. So it's very possible that we are left behind if we do not take things into our hands. Just like I said before, so we need to wake up. We need to write our own stories. We need to write our own technology. We need to imbibe our own culture. Okay, a good example of what we could do here in Africa, Nigeria to be precise, is, when you look at China is Middle East Asia. So China would teach their children how to code in their own language. But when we come here to Nigeria, Africa will teach people to write code in English language. There's a lot of cultural gap already. There's a lot of realities that is being left out just because we imbibe a lot of things from the north. So this is an example of if things continue in such manner, we could be left behind totally. If we don't take things into our hands ourselves, we could be totally left out of the game. Yeah.
Well, it's very difficult for us to imagine a place where we take things into our hands because, the internet is very much interconnected, right? And at the moment, it is driven, whether it's by way of innovation, whether it's by way of content, whether it's by way of use, it's driven by the global north. So to what extent can we actually reclaim the narrative, the direction, if the existing structure is already working against the global south? Okay.
I think the first thing we need to do is data diversity. We need to be diverse in our data. Like, we need to find some kind of representation and inclusion of the marginalized part of the world. So we need to be deliberate about that. Also, we need ethical artificial intelligence design. We need to be ethical. We need more fairness. We need more transparency and also accountability in AI, because we can't keep going like this. We need to also build investments around it, because a lot of Africans, venture capital, a lot of angel investors, we are not even investing in African startups. We have a lot of initiatives being built and being centered around AI in Africa, but we do not look at the local market. We look at the global market. So we need to reorient ourselves, bring ourselves back home, invest in our own local companies, our own local startups. With that, we are writing our own stories. And
Mr. Kangwe, I kind of have to ask, right? Would it be considered investment by way of making profit, or is it investment by way of charity? Well, charity might not be the word. Maybe a sense of patriotism, because these investors typically want their money back. And we talk about Africa or Nigeria as this untapped market. Maybe talent-wise, I hear that. But the earning power of these countries, these peoples that populate the African continent, is still pretty low. So do you think that investors would ignore a global north that has large amounts of disposable income and they can get a return on their investment almost immediately, and instead focus on a global south where it's difficult to keep governments accountable, where the infrastructure is not even promised and a lot of lip service is what we're paying as opposed to doing the actual work?
Okay, like this saying goes, it is always difficult until someone gets it done. So looking at the investment and in the local market in Nigeria, Africa, it seems so difficult, even though we have a lot of untapped market, untapped talent, and a lot of that. And yes, relatively, people would just look at the global north and, okay, it's a ready-made market. There are a lot of regulations, there are a lot of inclusion from the government in place. But if we keep looking at it from that aspect and we don't take a bet on Africa, on Nigeria, we would never get there. All of this, the Silicon Valley, they took a bet on investing in startups, funding ideas. It's just a bet, and we just have to get to the reality that if we keep playing it safe, we will never get there. So yes, there are some measures that could be in place from government, from sensitization, know what to invest, vet founders, and all of those things. So we could, if we have such structures in place, it should also lower the risk level of investors in Nigeria and Africa as a continent. Yeah.
Mr. Okongwe, I'm curious, and pardon me if this seems like a layman's curiosity, but every time that we talk about AI, we always talk about what the rest of the world is doing. We start at Silicon Valley and then it trickles down to everybody else. And as much as we're all connected by the use of the internet, my curiosity remains, can Africa, can Nigeria, can other countries that are not taking their cue from Silicon Valley create their own sort of technology, and more specifically AI, that is Africa focused, dealing with African problems and producing African solutions?
Definitely, we can do it. Technology is kind of open source. You can practically copy code from somewhere and implement it, as long as the solution and the problems are aligned on the same path. So there is no limit to what we can do. We just need to support ourselves. We need to also write our stories in the right way, because we've had a lot of unethical behaviors by founders, by people building products also. So we need to also look inward and also create adequate solutions to adequate problems. We don't need foreign solutions to our local problems. So if we do that, we give ourselves a fighting chance on setting our foot on this path. Yeah, so it's something we could definitely do. And if the government also is looking to embrace this technology and localize it for us instead of globalizing it, because we need to build locally first, then we ship globally. Because when we look at this technology that's from the global north, it is built for their own use. Then from there, they extend other uses to Africa. So but we can also do that, and thereby giving ourselves a competitive edge in the global market.
So as we wind down this conversation, right, it does give us an opportunity to speak on the Minister of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy, who's been spearheading this AI revolution in Nigeria, or initialization in Nigeria. They just started a 4-day workshop in Abuja yesterday that looks at a national AI strategy for the country. I wonder to what extent, how much of a Herculean, how much of a massive task this is, especially because, again, AI is trained on data, large language models, and if we're developing this national strategy, how much of that data would be local? Just give your thoughts on this.
Okay, firstly, I think this is like one of the welcome developments, because when building the community, when building a narrative about the technology, the community engagement is very, very important. And just like as this is happening, I'm sure a lot of stakeholders, policymakers, and technologists will be there. And yes, this is like the first step towards that. So we need to, I think, yes, we need a lot of local data, to be very, very honest. We need to capture a lot of data, because artificial intelligence thrives on data, typically machine learning. So we need to have a lot of our data being captured. So I think that is the first place we need to start. Make sure we are capturing data, or the already captured data are being documented and being trained properly. So I think that's the first step that we need to take. I think that answers your question.
Yeah, well, it does. Mr. Akongbe, thank you very much for speaking with us today on Tech Now. We appreciate your time and your expertise.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure to be here.
Our guest on the conversation is Oladotun Akongbe, the Chief Marketing Officer at FlynnCap and a blockchain expert. He joined us to speak about an existing bias in artificial intelligence and the large language models that train them.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.